I never thought I would tell this story. But here I am, 3 years later, with wounds that never fully healed. Some memories refuse to fade, no matter how hard I try to push them away. My name is Elliot. I'm 26 years old. 3 years ago, my family threw me out of the house over something I never did. They never gave me a chance to explain, never hesitated before turning their backs on me. I lost everything. My home, my trust in them, my sense of belonging, and it all started with an engagement ring. It wasn't just any ring. It was a family heirloom from my sister Gemma's fiancé, Tom. She was ecstatic when he proposed, proudly, showing it off to everyone. But one day, in the blink of an eye, the ring vanished. And since I was the only one home, I became the prime suspect. I still remember that moment like it was yesterday. I was upstairs, playing video games, enjoying a quiet afternoon, then suddenly a scream shattered the silence. "Where is it? My ring! Where is my ring?" I rushed downstairs to see Gemma standing in the kitchen, her face flushed with panic and anger. Her hands trembled as she pointed directly at me. "You took it, didn't you? You're the only one here. You stole my ring." I was stunned. I had no idea what she was talking about. I hadn't even seen the ring outside of the times she flaunted it in front of everyone. But Gemma wasn't interested in explanations. "You've always been jealous of me. You're a failure. And now you think you can steal my ring, sell it, and finally do something with your pathetic life?" I was too shocked to respond. Then my parents came home, and everything got worse. Gemma recounted her story, painting me as the villain. My mother gasped, covering her mouth in horror. My father's face hardened, his disappointment evident before I could even say a word. They turned my room inside out, searching for the ring. Of course, they didn't find it. But they found something else, my small savings from working at the grocery store. And that was enough for Gemma to seal my fate. "See? He must have sold it. That's why he suddenly has all this money," I pleaded with them, explaining that I had been saving up for months to take some college courses, but they didn't believe me. The next week was a nightmare. My parents kept pressuring me to confess. They threatened to call the police. I had nowhere to turn. Most of my old friends had moved away, and the few that remained didn't want to get involved in family drama. Then, after 7 agonizing days, my parents made their final decision. "We can't trust you anymore," my father said coldly. "You have to leave." My mother sobbed as I packed my bags, but she didn't stop me. She didn't fight for me. Neither of them did. I stood at the doorway, duffel bag over my shoulder, looking at the house I had grown up in. The only home I had ever known. And in the upstairs window, I saw Gemma watching me. For a split second, I thought I saw regret in her eyes, but then she turned away, and just like that, I was alone. The first few months were hell. I crashed on my best friend Ryan's couch. He had just returned from military service and was trying to get his own life together. I knew I couldn't stay long. I took any job I could find, washing dishes, walking, dogs, working construction. Some nights I barely had enough money for a cheap motel, and other nights I slept in my car. The worst part wasn't the struggle. It was knowing that my family was out there, living their lives as if I never existed. They didn't call. They didn't check in. I tried not to think about them, but I couldn't help it. Every time I saw a mother and son laughing at a coffee shop or a father helping his kid learn to ride a bike, it crushed me. But I refused to give up. Eventually, I landed a stable job at a warehouse. The pay wasn't great, but it was consistent. I saved up and rented a small room in a shared house with other warehouse workers. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and still, not a word from my family. They had erased me. 3 years passed. I had built a new life. I had a steady job, new friends, and was even taking online business classes. I had survived. Then, out of nowhere, an email arrived from my father. Subject: "We need to talk." I stared at it for a long time, before opening it. The message was short. Elliot, we need to meet. It's about the ring. Please call me. At first I wanted to ignore it, but something inside me needed answers. I called him, and what he told me changed everything. Gemma had accidentally dropped the ring down the garbage disposal while washing dishes. It had been stuck there the entire time. They only found it when the disposal broke and they called a plumber. My father admitted they had been wrong, that they had thrown me out for nothing, that they regretted it. But it had taken them 3 years to reach out. 3 years. I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop. I needed to see them, to hear their apologies in person. When they walked in, my mother burst into tears. My father looked smaller, older, like the weight of guilt had aged him. Gemma couldn't even meet. My eyes. They all started talking at once, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. My mother admitted she had kept my room exactly as I had left it, hoping I'd come back. My father confessed that he had replayed that day in his head over and over, wondering how he had been so blind. Gemma sobbed, saying she had always looked up to me, even though she never showed it, that she had let her own selfishness destroy our relationship. I listened. I let their words sink in. But I couldn't just forgive them. Not yet. I need time, I said. You don't get to decide when I heal. They understood. They didn't push. Before we left, my mother tried to hug me. I stepped back. The hurt in her eyes nearly broke me, but I couldn't let them rush me. 6 months later, I got a new job offer in another city, a promotion, a fresh start. When I told my family, they were disappointed but supportive. My mother cried. My father nodded in quiet acceptance. Gemma begged me not to go. I can't lose. You again, she said. You already did, I replied. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive them, but I do know this. I survived without them, and no matter what happens next, I'll be okay.